I'm going to do something I haven't done before, which was I'm going to tell the story, explain myself for why I've, first of all, taken on the Pandemonium Big Band as my COVID project, and get into specifically why we tackled Time Check, because there's a lot of really specific reasons, and a lot of people have been asking me to do other songs, and I really am mostly wanting to do my own library, but I think it owes some explanation for why I did Time Check at all. Anyway, the reason to do Pandemonium Big Band is kind of obvious. About mid-March, things just started to close down. I had a lot of gigs booked, a few with my own projects, and a lot of just corporate kind of gigs, a lot of weddings and some writing projects. And basically, as soon as everything got canceled, including my work. So the Pandemonium Big Band was sort of my way to keep myself busy. And I think a lot of the musicians in the band kind of look at it the same way. We try so hard to make it sound as good as it does when we're playing together, but really that's impossible. It sounds as good as it does because I'm fortunate to have some of the very best players around playing in the band. As good as it sounds with everybody recording on their own, it sounds that much better when we're all actually together. I mean, that just kind of is what it is. Okay, let's talk Time Check. So Time Check was the fifth video, and we're starting to work on number 7 right now. I guess YouTube sort of has its own chronology anyway, so if you wanted to figure that out, you could. We just put out Pure Imagination, which was number 6, and we're working on number 7, which is going to be The Jury's Out. The first 4 were all arrangements or compositions that I had done, and in fact, the first couple, The Cassowary and Biscuits for Doggos, and even Pandemonium number 1, despite its name, was a piece that I had written for the band prior that I had made some pretty significant changes to, but the bulk of it they had played before. So these were charts that they were familiar with, which of course made them easier to play in isolation because we kind of know what people are going to be doing. The idea to do a piece like Time Check is multifaceted. The first one is it's a piece that everybody knows. I mean, not everybody, but it's a popular big band thing. It was recorded by Buddy Rich on the Roar of 74. If you search Time Check online, you'll find things like the Airmen of Note playing it, and I mean it's one of those pieces. I think it's one of the tougher pieces that the Buddy Rich band played. And that was a band that was known for playing kind of like bombastic, virtuosic, fast, loud, big band music that is notoriously difficult to play. So I thought it would be fun to do a piece like that just to kind of show what we can do. It also presented some interesting challenges. So when we were doing pieces that I had written before, I already had them input into the computer, so it was really easy to spit out a MIDI file to play along with. If you've watched my video on how to make a virtual big band recording, you already know that I'm a big proponent of recording to MIDI, at least until you're able to not record to MIDI. But that involves making a MIDI demo of the entire piece. And Time Check, of course, being a standard chart and being written in the 70s, was not computerized. The chart that I got for it was handwritten, and it didn't have articulations. A lot of the published version of Time Check differs from the Buddy Rich recording that I was trying to emulate. So not only was I going to input the entire thing into the computer, but I was going to edit the parts. And it was useful. I was able to find a handful of mistakes. I mean, that happens. Every time I write a piece, there's a handful of mistakes. But I was able to go through this Don Menza chart from the 70s and find some mistakes that have been there the whole time. When playing it live, the players probably hear, well, that note's not in the chord, and then they just change it. But when you're recording virtually like this, you don't really have that opportunity. A mistake in like trumpet 2, they might not realize it's not in the chord because all the parts aren't covered yet when they're recording their part. And it's really hard to tell from the MIDI which extensions are in the chord. So that ended up being a lot more important than I thought it was going to be. But on top of that, there weren't a lot of articulations written in. And a lot of the articulations that were written in were different than what they played on the Buddy Rich record, which is, again, the one that I wanted to emulate. So if you listen to a lot of these great bands playing it online, you'll notice big differences in their performance between what they did and what you're used to hearing on Roar of 74. A lot of that's articulation and cutoffs. But a few of those things are purely stylistic, and some of them might have been as simple as Buddy Rich wanted to do it differently than Don Menza wrote it. Like there's a section at the end of the sax solo where drums and bass drop out on the chart, but on the record, they barrel straight through. So it was a matter of filling those parts in so they could play it the way they're supposed to play. And there are a lot of articulations that they probably decided as a section and penciled in, but on the chart that I had, they weren't there. So you hear a lot of times sax soli. There's a lot of offbeat tenuto things, ba-da-da-da-da, things that sort of is somewhat left-footed. It's definitely different than you would assume it would be. But if you listen to the Buddy Rich, that's what they're playing, and so that's what I wanted to hear because that's the record that I know. So I had to go through and add all of those. There were a lot of things that were written as like a whole note, but you listen to the record and they're off on 3 or they're off on 4, and when you're doing it virtually again, people aren't going to be able to listen to each other the same way. So that stuff just has to be in the part. So there was a lot of that kind of cleanup. The other part, this is getting a little bit techie, but this is the first time that I've recorded virtually something that changes tempo. And that presents all of its own kind of challenges. So if you listen to the Buddy Rich on this, he's playing an open solo where the time kind of gets nebulous. And then the band just comes in during a retard and gets slower and slower, grinds to a halt, kind of like a train or a car slamming on the brakes. It's a really neat effect. And I really wanted to get that. If you listen to some other bands doing it, they have practical workarounds, like, the drummer live, yelling a count off, which Buddy Rich did, but it's not on the Roar of 74. And so I wanted to find a way to really get it in there. So it was a matter of counting out a retard that made sense to my ears, and clicking it out when it gets slow enough, adding eighth note clicks or quarter note clicks. I can't remember what I did, but I doubled up the click during the retards. You could really hear what speed it was. And then the actual coda, they had written as 16th note rhythms, which made sense that like that kind of stuff. But I knew that the band was never going to be able to play it like that. And that rhythm it was slowing down and then hitting halftime was what it was really doing. And I thought it's going to be so much easier to play if I just write it out twice as long. So a 16th note is now an eighth note, and then just write straight 8 at the top, straight eighths. So that's what I did. So it was a matter of sort of reimagining the end of the chart, not content-wise. It's all the same notes that you hear, but it's written in a way that's a little easier to do virtually. And then counting out the last fermata to the length that I think sounds about right. And it's not quite the same. I didn't try to click it out exactly like the record. Maybe I should have. But I just sort of kept it about what felt right. And I forget what it was, a couple of whole notes and a quarter note or something like that. It was a strange looking thing, but then when people are playing it, they can literally count while they're holding the note and then cut off together. And it worked great. Like I was hoping, a lot of people sort of noticed and enjoyed the video. I don't know how many of them understood the amount of work that goes on in the background to make something like this happen. But for people that have played in jazz band, they know how tough a piece like that is. And this was just sort of a little background to give you an idea of what I had to do to get there. All right. If you enjoyed this and want to hear the background story to any of the other pieces, leave a comment. Let me know which piece you want to hear the story to next. And if you hated this, give it a thumbs down. Don't forget to hit subscribe. And I'll see you guys in a couple of weeks with The Jury's Out.